Welcome in, guys. We're back on our overreaction videos for week 4 this time. You know how it goes. We're going to break these up into separate videos, each one going over our overreaction. So make sure to check each one out if you like what you've seen in this one. We brought in a new special guest for this week, Mr. Riley Goodwin. Say hi, Riley.
What's up, everybody?
All right, we're gonna shoot into our next overreaction, and we're actually gonna toss this over to Riley. So tell us what you got, man.
All right, so this right here, we're going to be talking about Clemson and Florida State. And, you would probably think if we're talking about Clemson and Florida State, we're going to be trashing Clemson, which is the popular opinion of what to do in recent days. But honestly, my take is Florida State is overrated. Now, I want to start this argument by saying I do not think Florida State is a bad team. All right, they are 4-0. They have a quality win. I think they're a top 10 team. But right now in the polls, they're ranked number 4. And my issue with Florida State is they go out and they have to have overtime to beat Clemson. Now, I get it. Clemson's had their number for several years now. They snapped the streak, whatever, in overtime. But this is a Clemson team that lost to Duke 28-7. And it took Florida State to a whole overtime to overcome Clemson. So I want to pump the brakes a little bit on Florida State. It's natural to be like, well, what about that win in week 1 against LSU? Well, maybe that was good, but what about the game this week LSU played that they only beat Arkansas by 3 points? That win's not looking as strong now. And then also, if you paid attention last week, Florida State beat a 2-2 or 1-2 Boston College team by 2 points. So I don't really think Florida State's this great team that everybody's talking about right now. They're finding a way to win, and there's something to be said about that. In college football, a win is a win, and that matters. But now going into this specific game, do you know that Clemson outrushed Florida State 146 to 22 yards? They only put up 22 yards rushing. And then on top of that, Florida State went 4 for 13 on third down. If you look at these stats, these are what you should call padlock stats, as in if you do this, you shouldn't win the game. But they found a way to win the game. And also, just to provide some more statistical background on my argument, I had to do some more digging. And looking at total offense and total defensive stats, Florida State's offense ranks 47th in the nation, and their defense is 96th in the nation of allowing yards and putting up yards per game. So don't get me wrong, I love the Jordan Travis to Keon Coleman connection. It's one of the best you're going to find quarterback to wide receiver in college football nowadays. And Florida State has had some good wins, but let's pump the brakes. Is this team really the number 4 team in the country?
Honestly, I think Freddie should go first. This is pretty good. Yeah, you are a guest on here, and I appreciate you coming, but you're dead wrong there. I don't know if you've seen our videos, but I have Florida State making the playoffs preseason. And these are the 2 games they had to win: Florida State or Clemson and LSU. And I would challenge you on name other teams that have better wins than Florida State so far that's ranked ahead of them per se. You look at Georgia. Their best win is South Carolina at home when they were down 13-7 or 3, whatever it was, at home. Michigan, oh my God, they played one FBS team, period. Everything else is FCS. Texas, their best win's at Alabama, which is a good win, but Alabama's down this year. So I would put that on the level of Florida State. Ohio State just beat Notre Dame. We'll talk about that one here coming up later. And that was on the road. That was a very solid win. That's honestly, that's been one of the best wins of the year in college football, going to Notre Dame at a night game and pulling it off. Now, it took a Notre Dame blunder at the end of the game with only 10 men on the field for it to happen, but it happened. Then there's Florida State, who beat an LSU team, dismantled an LSU team in the second half. I mean, it was not pretty. Then they go to Death Valley, which historically is one of the hardest places to play in the country, home record-wise, and get a win. Yeah, it was a 3-point win, but it's a win. So that's 2 better wins than any of the other people that's ranked ahead of them. So I would argue that, honestly, I think Florida State should be ranked above Ohio State, personally. So right now they're sitting at 5, I think, in the AP poll. I think they should be 4. Now, that's a hot take, but I think if you have 2 quality wins, and yes, they won by 2 points against Boston College. Yeah, honestly, they should have lost that game. But what's the mark of a great team? You lose the stats, but win the game. You find a way to win the game, and that's what they do all year long. So that's my take. That's why I think they're, really, really good. Now, I think they still will make the playoffs, but Quinn,
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
Before Quinn jumps in right here, I'll rebuttal one of your takes right here. You said good teams find a way to win. And that really reminds me of a TCU team last year that made it to the national championship and got absolutely destroyed just because they barely won their games in the regular season. And I would argue that talent and the statistics do matter. But you know what? I'm not going to go ahead and rain on Quinn's parade. I want him to go ahead and take over, but that's just my little rebuttal.
My man compared TCU to Florida State. Wow.
Hey, TCU went to the national title, Freddie. You got to put the respect.
No. I'm not talking about any respect or anything. I'm talking like if you look at talent level, the Big 12, now the ACC is horrible too, but Florida State is more talent than TCU. They're not going to get dismantled if they make the playoffs, period.
So I think my take on this is I think Riley's going a little too far in one direction. I think Florida State is the 4th best team in the country right now. I don't have the 3 teams that are necessarily ahead of them coming into the weekend as the 3 teams that are ahead of them, but I do think they're 4th. I do have one issue with one particular thing you said, Freddie. I don't think Death Valley is a top place to play either. It's another one of my
You didn't listen to what I said. I said statistically, they had a 29-game home win streak or whatever it was. So
when you get to play Wake Forest and Syracuse and Pitt as like home games, yeah, you're gonna have this really great home record.
Okay.
They got to beat Florida State every other year at home, and that's all they really have to do as far as like high quality opponents in ACC play.
And they beat Notre Dame, right?
Yeah, but they don't play them every single that's not like a consistent thing. That being said, I think Florida State's a playoff team. I don't see anyone in the ACC that's going to beat them other than maybe that Miami. That's the last game left on the schedule as far as like somebody who can beat them. I'm not saying Miami's going to beat them. I'm saying as far as like someone who can beat them. Yeah, I wouldn't be like throwing this heavy Florida State slander all over them either. I think they're good. I will say I think the Texas win at Alabama is better than the Florida State win over LSU. Not because I think necessarily that Alabama's better than LSU. I think it's Texas went to Alabama, whereas an LSU played Florida State in a neutral site in Orlando. So. Yeah, I wouldn't be jumping on this Florida State's overrated bandwagon. I think Florida State's properly rated as like the 4th, 5th best team in the
country. Personally for me, are they overrated? It's a tough question. Are they underrated? No, they're not. Are they perfectly rated? I would actually go there. I would go there, I thought the take of that Florida State should be above Ohio State was absolutely crazy. That's my personal opinion. But I mean, you look at the ACC schedule, man, there's just not anything here for Florida State. I can see them slipping up in a couple places, but man, they could really just coast if they wanted to. And so the level of play that Florida State's going to get definitely in the back end of the year. I mean, dude, they're playing some team named UNA. Like, I mean, there's just like, they have nothing going for them, guys. Come on. Like, they don't have a strong schedule. And Clemson, they're good, but they're in a downfall pit too. Like, to barely survive against Clemson, to barely beat Boston College scored their most points against Florida State. And they've lost 3 games. And they won one of them. They've scored their most points against Florida State. So, I think Florida State has a lot to improve on, but their schedule is lax enough to where they don't have to be an elite team the full year. So I think that's something that you need to watch for this team. And I don't think Riley's that crazy. Like, I think, getting into the college football playoff, and with this lax schedule, it can be detrimental for a team like Florida State, who has to go up against a better defense than maybe an Ohio State, in a Michigan, in a Georgia, or something of that nature. And it could be I'm not saying it's going to be a 65-7 like TCU was last year, but it's going to be an ugly painting of a picture if they make it to the national championship game. So, because this isn't the 2013 Seminoles game who had a really good offense. This is a good offense. This is an elite offense. And so with a lax schedule, you're never really going to see that elite offense unless Florida comes out of somewhere and they have to play them at the end of the year, or maybe Miami is just this top-notch team. So
I'll say three things. As far as their two games that they struggled in, they were both road games. The Clemson game, I think talent-wise, Clemson has still got a bunch of 4- and 5-star guys, and they felt like a wounded animal backed into a corner, playing to prove that they were what they've been. So I think that's a big reason why they played Florida State the way they played.
Yeah.
The other game, Boston College is less defensible for Florida State. I do feel like there was a little bit of looking ahead to Clemson. A little bit of Boston College had their red bandana game, high emotions for them. So I think those played factors in those two games. And then Chase, the take that made me want to speak up was talking about their lax schedule. I don't like that take. That is the same take people have used against Clemson for years, and Clemson was relevant in the playoff for years.
Yeah. Over elite Clemson, son. But that's not Florida State's fault, though. Like, it's not their. They went out and scheduled LSU. Like, they're trying to make up for it. Okay. Simple question. Florida State is as good this season as the Clemson national championship teams. Any one of them.
I think they're just as good as the 2016 one as far as results are showing. That 2016 Clemson team had struggle games all season. In fact, they lost to, I believe it was Pitt. It might have been Syracuse.
I think it was Pitt.
Yeah. So that they remind me a lot. Like, if they're going to end up being this surprise good team, they remind me a lot of 2016.
I'm not saying that they're going to steamroll everybody in the playoffs. I never even predicted a playoffs, like if they would win the first round, they'd make it to the championship. None of that. There's no point. That's impossible to predict. I'm sorry. I mean, things change. I just said that they can make the playoffs, and it's because Clemson's down. And I think after last year, they won 10 games last year. So, I mean, it's not like they went 7-5 and now all of a sudden they're really good. They're compounding back-to-back good seasons, and I think that means something.
Well, let me end with this right here, because I know we got other topics to get to. I never said Florida State couldn't be a playoff team. This was never the discussion. The discussion is, are they the fourth best team in the country right now? Or would they beat every single team in the country rather than just three? And that is where my argument lays right now. I said FSU's a top 10 team, and they have an easy schedule, so they could very well walk their way to the playoff. But just because you're in the playoff doesn't mean you're a top 14. So my argument here doesn't have to do necessarily with Florida State as much as it does the powerhouses that are in the Pac-12 that I put above them, and the powerhouses in the SEC and Big Ten that I would take on a neutral site over Florida State.
Who in the Pac-12 besides Southern Cal would you take over? You'd probably take Oregon
and Washington. Right? Easy. Oregon and Washington right now. All day.
I wouldn't. I would maybe take Oregon and Southern Cal. Maybe.
Have you watched Southern play? I have. Penix Jr.'s averaging like 450 yards a game.
I understand, but if you want to talk about a weak conference in the games that he's played so far, now the Pac-12 is a great conference overall, but the games he's played so far, it's been pretty weak. A stellar performance. Now I don't know if you saw the video. He was in my Heisman list preseason. So I know that boy is good, but I still think I'd take Florida State.
You think you'd only beat Boston College by 2 points?
Ooh, probably. A red bandana game? Probably.
Ooh. Well, I disagree on that.
Oh, I cannot wait till until Washington loses. We are having you back, and oh man,
Come on, bring it. Let's go.
oh man, man. All right, that's all for this one.
That's going to be the end of today's video. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure if you liked this one to watch the others in this series that just got released today. We thank you for coming in. I've been Quinn. This has been 3 Ball Takes, Freddie, Chase, and our special guest, Riley. Riley, thanks for coming on.